First of all, congratulations to all you graduates. Thank you for attending the class. It is a very special class, and as Ann mentioned, it's been going on for a long time. And I just so much appreciate Ann and Judy and the whole staff training and development area, because they just do a wonderful job, and they are asked to do so much. It is amazing the capacity and the bandwidth they actually have. So can we give them all a big hand? Okay, well, with that much experience in the room, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to add to any of your knowledge base. But I would this morning like to talk about and introduce you to 5 individuals. These individuals, as you know, are more than classroom training. Classroom training is very, very important. But we also just learn so much from our mentors, from those that were around during the day, all of our colleagues, and just the situations that we find ourselves in. So I'd like to introduce you to these 5 folks and tell you a little bit about what I learned from them. And perhaps by the end of this, you'll be able to pick up 1 or 2 items. First of all, the first person, there are a couple of them that I won't mention by name, and it'll be obvious to you why later, and the others I will mention. The first one was a politician, a very well-known politician in Austin in the early 70s. And he was the CEO of this company. And at that time, I was a young auditor, and I went to a meeting. I must have been a senior auditor. I would have been in the meeting. But I went to a meeting with the CEO, and one of my partners were sitting to my left, and to my right was one of the managers. And I'm sure we were in there to talk to them about the audit and about maybe management of their items, how to improve internal control, those kind of things. And so we're talking to him. Actually, the partner is explaining things to him, and all of a sudden he gets up from his chair, says, "Excuse me," and he begins to walk out. We thought walk out the room, but there are sliding doors right behind where I was sitting, just the way out of the room. And he went around the desk and he walked right into the closet. So we were sitting there and just with each other. The CEO just walked into the closet. We didn't know what to do. We didn't know whether we should go in and out of the closet. We just accepted it, just hoping that he would come out and realize his error, assuming he was making an error and trying to go outside. But just about as fast as he walked in, he came back out and walked outside. And we were just, oh my gosh, what do we do with that? Isn't that sort of strange? And so we just sat patiently and came back and we finished our meeting. I've told that story a lot of times since, because there were several things that I learned from that. First of all, you notice that you've been supervising more than a day, you never be surprised. Never be surprised at what will happen in meetings or at work or any other time. You have to manage the unpredictable sometimes. Not that we don't necessarily know exactly what that is, but you have to be able to manage that. You have to be able to react to it. You have to be able to react to it almost immediately. We also learn to show respect. I mean, we didn't ask him why we're in there. And the last thing we learned from this is be careful when you are judging people's motives. I mean, maybe he was going outside and went in there to make sure he had his umbrella for the day. I don't know what he was doing, but maybe he had good reasons. And judging is a challenging thing. We all did the Myers-Briggs, is that right? And so we all know what you are. I'm an INTJ, and we all know what that is. I think it's intuitive. I am an introvert, intuitive thinker, and what's the J stand for? Yeah. So I have to be cautious about the pros and cons of all of those things. And so that's what we learned from that particular CEO. The next guy by name Vernon Jones. Anybody ever meet anybody named Vernon? Me neither, except this guy, Vernon Jones. It fit him quite well. He was a very energetic guy, and he was vice president of the Texas Hospital Association. I only worked at THA for a couple of years between stints with a public accounting firm. But we called him B. So be like to have fun. He always had a good time, especially with his close staff. Now sure, we worked hard and he was energetic and very serious at times, but we did a good job and we had to work hard, but he had a good time always. And so that's what I picked up from Vernon, and that is, have fun, don't take yourself too seriously. I mean, it's important not to take yourself too seriously. It's important sometimes just to sit back and laugh at yourself. There is so much freedom when it comes to that. And just enjoy your colleagues. Have a good time at work. There's plenty of time for serious work, committed concentration, but it's just important to pay attention and enjoy your colleagues. The next person I'm going to mention is Chancellor of the University of Texas System. I won't use his name, but I was there with 4 or 5 chancellors while I was at the system. And there was a time that my boss, which is Dan Burke, later became chancellor. Dan and I went to a meeting, I think with a couple of our colleagues. And we were talking to the chancellor about FNA facilities, administration that we do with research and overhead recovery. I don't know why we were talking to him about that, because he was a very, very intelligent person. He was very knowledgeable, very experienced in that area. For some reason, I was giving a presentation on FNA rates. And as I lumbered on and was talking to him, he was sitting there with his arms folded, leaning back in his chair. And as I continued to talk, his eyes became heavier, heavier, and heavier. And finally, his chin was resting on his chest. And, I've spoken to groups before, and occasionally somebody will fall asleep or whatever, and that's okay, just concerning as that is. Have you ever tried talking to someone who's sound asleep? So, again, I found myself in a situation where I didn't know what to do. I didn't know whether we should just all get up and tiptoe out the room and have him wake up to A&P room. Whether we should sit quietly until he took his nap and then continue the meeting. I looked over at my boss as to say, well, what do I do? And Dan did this. Keep talking. Okay. So I just kept talking. So I'm talking to a dead man sitting there. I was just talking to him, and I kept looking at my colleagues because I needed someone to talk to at least look at me. Of course, they were just almost dying laughing, so I had to stop looking at them. And so I just looked at the chancellor like he was looking at me, and then I was getting near the end because I was speedily moving through it because freedom wasn't listening anyhow. And as I said, he was sitting like this. He woke up at the start and he hit his glasses, and his glasses flew off and landed right in the middle of the room. So there we all are, we're sitting there, and now the chancellor's sitting there without his glasses on, and they're sitting in the middle, about 3.5 feet from where I was sitting. So again, I'm going to do it. What do I do? Do I pick them up? Well, it seemed to me like the gracious thing to do, and the polite thing to do is to pick it up and take his glasses to him. But I didn't know whether I actually should even acknowledge that. So I just sat there and continued to talk. He got up, picked up his glasses, and sat down, folded his arms, and I finished. And then he started asking me questions about what I had just talked about while he was asleep. I guess he wasn't. Or if he was able to also hear me. He started asking me questions. And that was really challenging because I was so surprised that he knew what I was talking about, or that he heard what I was talking about. To be able to ask questions, I could hardly answer them. So I learned several things from the chancellor that day. I always, when I do talks, I always run them by my wife. I never give her the talk. I just tell her things I'm going to be talking about. And I asked her questions about that. It's a risky thing to do with a spouse. But nevertheless, I do it because she's a very smart person and she's never been short of advice. So I asked her for advice. And so I said that. So what do you think I learned from the chancellor? And almost without hesitation and without thinking, she said, don't be so boring. So luckily, And actually, I never really looked at it that way before, so maybe there's something to that. Don't be so boring. But here's the thing I was really thinking about, Lauren, and that is confidence. It's important to continue to have confidence. He had a lot of confidence. He didn't face him in the least. Very composed. Got his glasses, sat back down, didn't apologize for anything. He just kept his composure and kept going. And I guess we did too, because we were still in the room. And then also, the last thing I learned from the Chancellor is never fall asleep with your arms crossed like this, because you can do bad things. So if you're at your desk, put your arms on your desk, so you hit the door if you So never fall asleep with your arms crossed. Then there's Regent Ryder, Doug Ryder. Doug was a regent from UT Tile, and a wonderful man, a very gracious man. I didn't call him any regents unless I had to when I worked with the system. But he was the chairman of the Finance and Planning Committee, and at the time I was executive vice chancellor for business, so we interacted a lot as far as working on university business, system business, and the committee presentations at board meetings. So I called Doug a lot. It never bothered me to call Doug. I never was intimidated by Doug. He was just a gentleman in all respects. And he was very, these are the things I learned from Doug. He was very generous. He was generous with his time, and sometimes we have to be that way as well. He was sacrificial in the way he was generous with his time. He was also generous with his money. We asked him about the entire, we asked the Chancellor's UT system, a very generous gentleman. And he was also generous in another way. And that was recognizing others, complimenting others, perhaps even overly so, if you can be overly so. I'm not sure you can. But he went out of his way to thank people and to show them how much he appreciated them, even when they may not actually have done that much. So he was a very generous man, and Doug's passed away now. But I miss him. He was a fun guy to be around. I always had a smile on his face, and so he taught me to be generous. Not that any of these things that I've learned I do very well sometimes, but he was a special man. And then finally, the last gentleman I mentioned was Jack Fleming. Jack was the manager of Fox.